with the Rankin Hines, Pearl River Flood Control and Drainage District. We have Steve Turner, I believe Renee Turner is here as well. Dallas Quinn is here. I'd like to recognize Mayor Kathy Smith from the City of Flowood. Thank you for joining us. Earlier today, in our 2 p.m. meeting, Mayor John Horn and Board of Supervisors President Robert Graham, as well as a board member on the Drainage District, they were in attendance at the earlier meeting. Not sure if they're going to be able to make it to this one or not. But with that being said, I would like to go ahead and get us started. So we did this basically a year ago. We brought you the draft EIS, and following these meetings that we had last year, we had basically another 4, same locations. This is our 4th and last meeting, if you will, for the revised draft environmental impact statement. That's what we're working on now. We received over 6,000 comments, which was very, very beneficial for us. It allowed us to know what you, the public, thought of the project, where you thought it had merit, where you thought it lacked. And so I cannot overemphasize how important it is to get your feedback. So that being said, we'll go ahead and get started at this time. So at this time, I'm going to, Colonel Gibson, if you would please make your remark. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Councilman Floyd is also here from Jackson, so I just recognize him. Good afternoon. My name is Colonel Jeremiah Gibson. I'm the commander of the Vicksburg District of the United States Army Corps of Engineers. I'm honored to address you today regarding the revised draft environmental impact statement for the Pearl River Basin, Mississippi Flood Risk Reduction Management Project. This marks a significant interagency milestone to address risks in Jackson, Mississippi. And I want to emphasize your critical role in your participation today during this National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, review period. So the NEPA process ensures federal projects are thoroughly evaluated for their environmental impact, their technical feasibility, and their alignment with the public interest. This revised draft environmental impact statement, published on July 3rd, 2025, and open for public comment until August 18th, 2025, evaluate flood risk management alternatives to protect the Jackson metropolitan area from devastating flooding impacts as experienced in 1979, 1983, and 2020, as well as other years. Your feedback during this 45-day period is essential to shaping a project that is effective and responsive to the needs of all communities. The Corps of Engineers doesn't do anything without congressional authority and appropriation. So the authority, which we're working under in Section 3104 of the Water Resource Development Act of 2007. In it, it states the Secretary of the Army is authorized to construct a flood risk management plan that is technically feasible, environmentally acceptable, and provides a level of flood risk damage equal to or greater than the economic development plan. The revised draft environmental impact statement assesses these criteria, ensuring the report meets rigorous engineering standards while minimizing environmental impacts. This includes evaluating the Pearl River Basin, and we look forward to and have engaged with downstream communities during in-person sessions in Monticello, Mississippi, and Slidell, Louisiana. Our commitment to you is to deliver a project that's both practical and sustainable, and preserves the natural resources of the Pearl River while protecting all communities from flooding. Community input is the cornerstone of this process. The previous draft environmental impact statement released last year in June of 2024 received over 6,000 comments demonstrating the deep engagement of our stakeholders. This feedback prompted us to go back and refine the alternatives, ensuring the proposed solutions balance technical flood risk and environmental stewardship. By participating in public meetings like this, submitting written comments, and engaging through email or snail mail, you help us identify concerns, refine alternatives, and ensure community participation. So said another way, your voice matters to the solutions presented as we reflect those priorities for those who work, live, and thrive in this region. We need to hear your thoughts, and we need to hear your recommendations. So in closing, I urge you to continue to participate in the NEPA process, continue to come to the microphone and participate in the public session. Your participation ensures that we develop a flood risk management solution that is provides a shared understanding of the need to respond in Jackson, Mississippi. Thank you, and I look forward to your feedback. I do also just want to say, on the map here, I'll kind of explain what we heard the other sessions, just so there's full transparency and visibility in the process. So the top is Jackson, Mississippi. You'll see Ross Barnett Reservoir, which was constructed for water supply for Jackson, Mississippi. It is not operated for flood control, but you know, that water which is discharged greatly influences what happens downstream throughout the Pearl River. But when you look at the rain events that have happened historically over decades, only 35% of the waters that fall in the upper watershed actually reach Slidell. The middle portion of the basin also receives 31% of the water that goes all the way down to the Gulf. And 34% is also just kind of falls immediately in the lower Pearl Basin. And that's critically important to understand that this river is 444 miles north to south, and it experiences many different environmental factors as it flows through our communities and as people live and work near this river. And as such, each area of the river faces different challenges. So there's flood challenges here in Jackson. We continue to hear from constituents about bank stabilization issues in the middle Pearl, and we continue to hear about environmental concerns and channel concerns as sediment has continued to fill in with the loss of navigation in the lower Pearl Basin. So we look forward to the dialogue and I welcome your participation, and I'm going to turn it back over to Tom to kind of continue the agenda and then participate in the overall briefing. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, sir. So at this time, I would like to conduct just a few minor housekeeping things. As you noticed when you came in, there are sign-up sheets. They're out in the lobby. We would ask that you please put your name on there, your information on there, because we do want to record your presence here. We want to know how many folks came, in response to this meeting. The other thing I would mention is it also helps. We're videoing the entire meeting. We also have a transcriptionist down here, and we will release a transcript as well. So at some point when we finish all this process, you'll be able to go to the website and see the draft document and its appendices. You'll be able to see the recordings from these public meetings. Like I said, this is before. You'll also be able to see the transcript. And so that will give you additional information as you need to follow up with this. The other thing is that when we finish the presentation, I'm going to offer up a time where you can come down and provide your comments via the microphone. I would ask two things. One is that you would please state your name first so that we be sure that the transcriptionist can get your name right. The other thing is try to limit your comments to about 3 minutes, simply because we want everybody to have opportunities to speak. So, all right. I think we can move ahead. There's one last thing I would want to mention. Is when you came in, you noticed that we have some of the big study boards or poster boards that are out there, and we have our subject matter experts that are there, and they're very good questions. So if something that you have a question about, like the hydraulics or hydrology or economics, those folks will be out there for you to talk to in the lobby. But we would really like to have your questions. So there's how many ways can you submit a question? You can do it verbally right here as a part of this evening's festivities, so to speak. We have these comment cards that are out in the lobby. As you came in. There, you'll also have a website and a QR code that you can link and go right to that, as well as email and US Post Office. So, all right, let's go ahead and get going. So the purpose of this meeting, as I mentioned earlier, we had a draft EIS last year. We heard the comments. We made additional tweaks and additions, and we come up with a revised version. That's what's out there. It went out for review on the 3rd of July. That review continues through 18 August. So we'll talk about the rules of engagement in just a moment. As we mentioned about the meeting schedule, this is the last of our public meetings. We will talk about some details on the project. We're going to talk a little about the history, the various environmental considerations, economic considerations, and wrap up with the project timeline, as well as that sheet that I obtained that had all the information on there about how you can access the information. So we're here for 2 reasons. First is to provide you an update on what's occurred since our last basically public meeting briefing to you. And then secondly, to provide you that opportunity to comment. And so on that revised plan, what works, but still may give you concern, what you feel that you can support, what changes you recommend to move forward. All right, so housekeeping information. Simply put, I think you can all see that I've covered it all. There are the comments, the way to submit comments, and the very last page of the presentation has that information as well. So with that, let's hop right over into the table of comments and what the revised document and appendices look like. The document, of course, it follows the things that we're expected to do under NEPA. And you can see the various subjects that are covered there. And then to your extreme right, you'll see all the various appendices that have been created that go along with that. There's a lot of information in there. So we'd love if you could dig into that. Okay. As I mentioned, we'll not go over the meeting schedule anymore. This is our last meeting for this session. So we want to look at the okay. So the project purpose. All right. So the Pearl River has been impacted by human existence. The Pearl, as all rivers do, has undergone a lot of natural changes as well. And there's been an extreme amount of headwater flooding on this river in the last 150 years. And currently within the Jackson metro area, there's about 500,000 people that face potential impacts. You can see the numbers up there for commercial buildings. And so, as the commander mentioned, this project is authorized as a flood risk management project. And so we are doing our evaluation in accordance with Section 3104. The key changes, well, at the very bottom, you'll notice we have slightly different alternates, and those were derived because we did take the feedback. We did look further into it and have generated new alternates. We've got an alternate A1, alternate D1, and alternate E1, with the biggest difference between D1 and E1 simply being the addition of a weir to the pound of water. And then we heard from you very well. Last year, there was a request and desire to see some more of the economics information, so we've got an economics appendix. And then lastly is the inclusion of some additional flood risk management features, and we'll talk about those in the review momentarily. All right, so the Pearl history, I don't have to tell you a whole lot other than the Pearl we looked at a lot of times. We went back and there's a chief's report, the chief of engineers back in 1879 that described many of the problems that were there. And you recognize a lot of those. The West Pearl had navigation on it. That vessel right there is a Corps of Engineers vessel performing snag duty on the Pearl when it was navigable. It was not far from Rockport. That was in 1909. Lastly, down at the bottom, understand that we were not allowed to dredge anymore on the river. And as you're familiar with, if you don't dredge the river and it's a sediment-laden river, you get shoals. And so basically, the barge track is where they move sand and gravel, simply dried up. They were not able to move their goods economically. And so, where we are today. So, we are out in this area. There have been a number of changes, if you will, on the Pearl. Going back as even far as the original flowwood levees, the federal levees that were constructed were off Barnett Reservoir. Those were all constructed, and then probably one of the bigger ones is the addition of Interstate 55, which came about in 1971. And that included some channel straightening and some additional work there to get the interstate. So, and coming to where we are today, this began, the project for the Corps really began back in 1986 and has moved forward to where we are today. And we've been working in conjunction, in cooperation with the Rankin Hines group. So let's go on to the comments now. Brandon?
There we go. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Colonel. Well, good afternoon. Good to see you all. I know there's a lot of the places you could be tonight, and also working through the weather. Glad you're here. I'm Brandon Davis. I am the planning lead for the Corps of Engineers in the Vicksburg District. And what I want to do right now, we're going to go over the alternatives. We're going to go through pretty much the whole meat of the presentation. But I really want to set the table for you all, just to understand, so you'll understand the importance of you being here, the importance of your voice being heard, and the comments that you sent in. They were all looked at, and the bottom line is it helps make the product better. So thank you for being a part of this process. So these are the key comments that we received from when we had the document out back in 2024. If I could get you to focus your attention first off, there's a box in the bottom right-hand corner. It was the 5 common comments that we received from the citizens of the Jackson area. First one was a flood risk concern. Obviously, that was something near and dear to you guys. And then project features, the economics, the downstream impacts, and then the real estate. Diving into this a little deeper, I want you to focus on the second comment there, inclusions of more levees. We added the McLeod levee and Candy Club levee, and actually 3 levees were actually added from the draft back in 2024. And to show the transparency that we are doing what we say we're going to do, you can see where that is located at in the executive summary, section 3, and the varying appendices of where it's located as well. Also wanted to talk about the last comment. Will this project provide flood relief for homeowners? Alternatives D1 and E1. They include the overbank excavations and the levees, providing flood risk reduction to over 700 homes. That can be found in section 3. So this board is going to be out in the lobby for you guys to look over. But again, thank you all for helping make this a better product by offering comments to us last year. Go to the next slide, Tom. All right, so we're going to look at these 3 alternatives here and take a little deep dive into all of them. And as you guys know, that there has been a lot of alternatives for this area for many years. And when the Corps of Engineers looks at a project, we're not just going to consider one idea. We're going to look at a wide range of possibilities, and these are what we call alternatives. Now, to build that alternative, there's going to be measures within that. And the example that I've used, and probably the easiest one I know, is if you're baking some type of a cake or cooking whatever you enjoy, all the ingredients that come together are the measures, and the final product will be an alternative. So probably the easiest way I know how to explain it. But again, from looking at the previous slide that Tom had up, there's a long history of this project. Started back in 1986 with a 4-point plan, which was the Chaco Dam around the Carthage area. In 2007, there was a levee plan introduced by the Corps. 2020, the non-federal interest through the Section 211 authority had released a draft, and then we got involved as the Corps at the direction of the Assistant Secretary of the Army, and we released a draft in 2024. And of course, we're here tonight to go over revising that document. From this alternative that we have, or excuse me, the version that we have now, and the input from you along the way. We're introducing tonight 3 alternatives. A1 being a non-structural alternative. D1 is a structural option that includes a weir. That weir is going to be located just south of the I-20 bridge here in Jackson. And then alternative E1 is a very similar option to alternative D1, but it will not have a weir south of I-20. We're going to walk through these slides here. Alternative A1 is a non-structural approach that was carried forward from the 2024 draft that was sent out, but we included the Canton Club levee. So a non-structural approach is what it is. We don't use any type of structural approach, being a dam, levees, pumps, things, channels, things of that nature to help reduce flood damage reduction. But what we do is we use what they call non-structural measures to keep you out of harm's way. Examples of non-structural measures would be elevating the home, flood-proofing homes, foundations, buyouts, or relocations. The implementation or the successful implementation of an alternative like A1, it would rely on the voluntary participation of qualified homeowners, and there may be additional costs incurred by the homeowners to prepare the structure for the non-structural elements. Alternative A1 did gather a lot of support from non-governmental agencies, organizations, and certain federal agencies, but it does fall short of the effectiveness and the practicability, making it insufficient for looking at long-term flood risk problems to the area. I think the big takeaway from this is that it really lacked a level of protection for flooding in the Jackson area. You had some areas down in the south part of Jackson that were really more prone for the non-structural elements, but it doesn't really take care of the entire problem that was recognized here in Jackson. Let's go to the next one, Tom, D1. Alternative D1 is a more comprehensive structural solution to reduce flood risk in the area. And what it would do, and what would be in a part of D1, the measures of part of D1, deepening of the channel level banks. And what this would do is it would allow for more water to pass through with high flow events, reducing the likelihood of flooding in the surrounding area. I want to really point out to you guys that this would not include any work in the channel. Okay, everything would include in the overbank area, no dredging in the channel at all. And we have a very good board out there with our H&H group that it really shows that, where you can understand what I'm talking about of the excavation of the overbank area. So I encourage you to take a look at that once we're complete with this tonight. Adding the federal levees that we talked about, the 4 key levees, the Canton Club, McLeod, Richland, and Caney Creek. And the good thing about these, and really the takeaway from adding these levee sections, flood protection to 705 homes and 40 industrial structures. So a lot of value added with adding those levees to this alternative. This would have a new weir and a fish passage. The new weir will be built and we include a fish passage and a low flow gate. We want to make sure we're maintaining the connectivity to the aquatic ecosystem. So that gate will be there. The weir will provide attractive locations for recreational features. And some of the auxiliary features, such as improvements to the existing federal levees, are also needed to accommodate ponding behind the weir. Non-federal levee improvements. Currently, there are some levees that aren't under a federal jurisdiction. A good example is the one near the Savannah Street wastewater plant. That would be improved to increase a system-wide approach of protection. Bridge modifications, and I want to make sure that I don't confuse or misspeak when I talk about the bridge modifications. We would not be taking out any bridges or replacing bridges. And the bridge modification, what has been defined is it's going to be improving and armoring some of around the structures of the bridge with rock and other mechanisms like that to accommodate modifying of the channel. The big thing is you want to make sure you don't interrupt any traffic flow in Jackson. We see what we're dealing with now with some of the construction over on I-20 on 55. We want to make sure that we minimize or have no interrupted traffic flow. And mitigation measures. There's going to be many environmental enhancements, habitat restoration, other compensatory measures to offset any unavoidable impacts from the construction activities. That's one thing we do with the Corps, and we build something if we harm the environment, we're going to find a way to mitigate for that, and there will be mitigation features for this alternative. Overall, alternative D1, it does aim to reduce flood risk through major infrastructure upgrades, also working to minimize the environmental impacts and maintaining that ecological function. I want to point out too that also with alternatives D1 and E1, there are no non-structural elements that were included into either one of these alternatives, but we are going to be submitting this information to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works for them to make an informed decision on these alternatives. And it is possible that those non-structural elements could be included back into D1 or E1. So if that's something that interests you, we certainly want to hear your comments and for that. Next slide, Tom. So going to alternative E1, as we mentioned, very similar alternative. There is no weir for this alternative here. It still has the deepening of the channel overbanks. Again, we're not going to be impacting the channel itself. It's all the overbank areas. It has the levees, Candy Club, McLeod, Richland, Candy Creek. I'll also talk about the non-levee improvements down around the Savannah Street wastewater plant. Bridge modifications, same thing we're talking about, just armoring around the structures to make sure that any flow, additional flow going down through there is not interrupting traffic flow. And then the mitigation features will be the same. They're not going to be the same. There will be mitigation. In some areas, the mitigation may be less because you would have a weir in place. All right. So the next slide is the hydraulics. And I know this is one that is very important, and this really here is the so what of the project, and this is where a lot of people had concerns. One thing I want to remind you all is that the Corps of Engineers, we do not operate the Ross Barnett Reservoir. We have no jurisdiction on that, so if you have questions on how that's operated, we really can't help you on that, because that's not within our federal jurisdiction. But what I wanted to show you here on this graph that you see up here, it's going to show you the water surface levels that are expected to change with or without the project for D1 and E1 during a 100-year flood event. And a 100-year flood event, that is the standard of what we do when we are kind of the benchmark when we're evaluating flood risk. But what a 100-year flood means is a 1% chance of a flood occurring in any given year. So Tom has done a great job of being my point person for me. So on the graph here, if you look at the right side, that is the upstream of the figure. There's a blue line there. That is going to be the water surface elevation without the project being implemented. And if we implemented the project, you see the orange line level. That is for E1 and D1 in that place. As you can see, I believe we have a spot there. There you go. Thank you, Tom. That is where the weir will be located at on just south of I-20. Our modeling shows that, and there have been some questions about downstream impacts and what we would see with that. The modeling team, the HTIX team, has been remarkable. They've done a great job. The modeling shows that hydraulic impacts resolve about 5 miles north of Monticello near the concurrence of Papaya Creek. We also talked about it yesterday. There was a lot of discussion down in Slidell and Monticello about the impacts. And the news that we've seen is that this project here or any alternative selected here is not going to impact the state of Louisiana. Now, sure, they do have issues with the Pearl River in their areas, but it's from things that wouldn't be associated with this project here. The low flow scenario, and I think something else to point out is Tom was doing a great job being in the corner there. You see how the lines come together and how you see the reduction based on without project and with project and what these alternatives will do for the flooding in Jackson. Also, there's concern on drought conditions, rightfully so. We have droughts here and low flow. For low flow scenarios, there would be a drought gate, a drought flow gate included in their weir design. This gate obviously is going to maintain flows from the Ross Barnett Reservoir that doesn't naturally overtop the weir, like what we see in a drought condition or when there are water supply withdrawals from the city of Jackson. I think the most important thing too to also realize is that this feature doesn't increase downstream flows during any type of flood event. It's going to supplement minimum flows, ensuring that there are no added stress to downstream communities during drought conditions. And that's another concern that we've heard from Monticello with the paper plant. So that was good news from our hydraulic team. Next slide. Okay, economics. This is something that was added in addition from the last draft in 2024. Key takeaways from this is that alternatives D1 and E1 on an average annual basis will reduce damages between $19.7 and $19.8 million. Again, that's on average annual basis. Some years there wouldn't be any damages preventing because there's no events, but over an average annual, that's what we would expect. Both alternatives, E1 and D1, will reduce annual damages from flooding from the headwaters of the Pearl by approximately 70%. That's that number that I just thrown out to you. Both alternatives will also remove approximately 90% of residential structures from the 100-year floodplain and approximately 60% from a 500-year floodplain. One of the concerns we have heard, and we're very cognizant of that, is the cost, and the cost seems to be high. Well, in the Corps of Engineers, the way that we put price contingencies is based on the level of design that we have, and that's based off our engineering regulation 1110-2-1302, updated from June of 2023. And when you have a 10 to 60% design, normally you have a contingency rate between 20 to 50%. Currently for this project, we have a cost contingency of 44%. And while that does seem high, there is risk associated with the level of design that we currently have. That also is going to take into consideration some of the potential inflation that we might see by the time we start construction. Our team has worked closely with the non-federal interest, and our experts got together to come up with those values. This is also information that will be pretty soon going under the agency technical review with the Walla Walla Center, the cost center of expertise out of Walla Walla, Washington. All right, next slide, Tom. So now we'll get into some of the environmental compliance consideration, and really one of the more important things that we've heard loud and clear from you, and rightfully so, is the impacts on threatened and endangered species. And based on available data, it was determined that, excuse me, this is for alternative D1 we're going to talk about first. May affect but not likely adversely affect the species of the northern long-eared bat and the tricolor bat. This is for D1. Likely adversely affect but not likely to jeopardize would be the Gulf sturgeon, green sawback turtle, the Pearl River map turtle, alligator snapping turtle, Louisiana pigtoe mussel, and then the monarch butterfly. For E1, the impacts to endangered species are actually less. We may have a may affect but not likely adversely affect for all the species that were listed in D1. But the good news is, as far as would likely adversely affect but not likely jeopardize, it was the turtle species that I mentioned to you earlier. If you remember, we have the overbank areas that we'll be doing some excavation to. Even though there's not a weir in the channel, impounding any type of water, there we still could have some potential impacts to turtle species. The Fish and Wildlife Service concurred with the determinations that I just had mentioned to you, and they provided some reasonable and prudent measures and terms of conditions that we would have to implement to minimize the adverse impacts for these species. I'd like to point out that these all can be found in the biological opinion of the document, which is in Appendix D of the draft EIS. Very important implementation of these reasonable and prudent measures and terms of conditions. They're mandatory for the listed species that I just listed to you. Should either alternative move to a construction phase, there must be steps taken to reduce impacts to the species listed as threatened or endangered. So mitigation is another area we want to focus on for a minute. The preliminary mitigation plan can be found in Appendix F of the draft. It was developed in coordination with our non-federal interests, very good collaboration with them, and also the resource agencies. It's a general mitigation plan, and I want to point that out to you. It is based on existing data that is specific to the project area. Like I said, we have worked closely with our sister agencies and are non-federal interests, but this is a general mitigation plan right now until a selection has been made by the Assistant Secretary of the Army Corps of Civil Works. Our non-federal interest has done a very good job of assessing, helping us identify and assessing forested habitat mitigation. These lands are within the Pearl River Basin, and they would be available for acquisition. Also, do a little bit on riverine mitigation. We have riverine mitigation measures that they're going to be assessed in detail in a subsequent plan design phase of design. But it would be prior to construction. I think the important thing to know about anything mitigation, everything will be finalized, the mitigation plan will be finalized prior to any type of construction. HCRW, for any type of project that we do with the Corps of Engineers, anything involved with the Corps of Engineers, an American Society for Testing Material, Phase 1 Environmental Site Assessment is completed. It's outlined and identified any potential concerns surrounding any type of HCRW. HCRW, I think we have it up there, but it's hazardous, toxic, radioactive waste. Once we do that initial assessment, we may have to move to a Phase 2. Phase 2 would involve collecting any soil or water samples to assess whether they contain any potential contaminant. For this project, there has been over 6 environmental assessments already completed, and prior to any form of construction, an HCRW site assessment would be done, and appropriate measures would be completed to address any HCRW prior to construction. The big takeaway from that is the Corps will not do any type of construction measures if there is a potential HCRW site that has to be cleaned up prior to construction taking place. All right, for our cultural resource slide. Yeah, thank you, Tom. So the graph that you see there is based on a graphic from the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. As you all can see, this is a fairly rich area with cultural resources. So what is cultural resources? They are physical or intangible elements that reflect the cultural, historical, or social values of a community or a society. So with all studies we do, we have to consider what the cultural resources are for both alternatives to see if they're going to have any impacts on historical properties. Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act is a federal law that requires agencies to consider the effects of these projects on the historical properties before they are carried out. It's going to preserve the cultural heritage and ensures that important historical buildings, sites, structures, cultural resources are identified and considered during the project planning phase. Our team, our cultural resource team, they have done a great job working with not only our Mississippi but also our Louisiana State Historic Preservation Officer, or what we call them as a SHPO. They've worked with tribes and they've worked with other stakeholders to develop a programmatic, or they're negotiating a programmatic agreement. A programmatic agreement will be finalized before the signing of the record of decision. And what that programmatic agreement is, basically it states, okay, well, if I do alternative E1, these are the things that I'm going to have to do to minimize the impacts of cultural resources. So it's really the plan of what we would have to do for that alternative. All right, next slide, Tom. All right, tribal nations. So the project team has actively coordinated with federally recognized tribes throughout the study process. To date, no tribal lands or specific tribal rights have been identified within this study area. However, our tribes have acknowledged the presence of protected tribal resources, and these can include cultural keystone species such as essential plants, animals, natural resources that are central to the identity or the culture of a tribe. And also there could be significant sites and landscapes such as burial grounds, historical trails, gathering places, anything of spiritual importance to these tribes. These resources are being considered in the planning process. We want to ensure that we are respectful and responsible in our treatment to all these areas with a cultural value to these tribes. A water quality, a 404B1 evaluation will be conducted after photo data is provided. In Section 401, a pre-filing meeting request was submitted to the Mississippi Department of Environmental Quality on July 11th of 2023. We also reissued on April of 2024 and also on April of 2025 due to the inclusion of additional features within the alternatives. And the final thing I want to talk to you today about is the recreation. Currently, as you know, it's very difficult to assess the Pearl River, the study area, because much of the land along the waterfront is privately owned. There are a couple of public boat ramps that you can access from the floor State Bluff and also up at Ross Barnett Reservoir. And with the no action alternative, the public access to the river for any type of recreational use will continue to depend upon existing flood control operations and the maintenance. So it's very important. This could be a very important feature for Jackson and Central Mississippi. So alternative D1 and E1, they would create potential for public recreational opportunities. Could include some boat ramps, kayaking and canoe opportunities, camping areas, biking trails, hiking trails, and then if you're into watching wildlife and birds and things of that nature, the opportunity to do that. Any construction associated with these alternatives will focus on the river channel and bank areas by construction. And these potential recreational features will be studied in more detail as the project moves forward. And that's all I have for you, but again, I just want to thank you again for being here, echoing what Tom and the Colonel said. I look forward to hearing your comments. We have our subject matter experts outside that can help you with the more technical side, but I can't emphasize enough your comments and what you do. You're here to make this project better, and we appreciate that. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Brandon. So you all may wonder what's next. So the comment period, like I said, closes on the 18th of August. Once that happens, those comments will in turn, the responses will be developed, and that will be part of when we publish the final EIS, that will become a part of that document. We will then proceed with design quality, or quality review process, of course, council review, and lastly, we will be presenting the final EIS to the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works by the end of the calendar year. So that's what the schedule basically looks like. Okay, and so I mentioned this early, but this is one you might want to take a photo of. This is the easiest way to get links not only to everything that you've heard here, past presentations, how to respond in terms of the email, all the data information is on our public-facing website, and of course the QR codes. And lastly, if you're not comfortable with any of those things, we still have a regular post office box or a mail. So, with that being said, that concludes our presentation at this time. I'm going to leave this up on the screen for everybody. Before we open it up to general comments, I would like the opportunity to any of our elected officials, if anybody wants to make a statement, we want to make sure that opportunity is there. Just yet. So I'd like to offer the opportunity to the Rankin Hines Board, anybody from that board. Okay. Hearing none, then it is now time to open up for general comments. And just a reminder, when we get done, please, if you've asked your question and you don't have all the information that you need, we would welcome you back in, like I said, in the lobby for you to talk with our subject matter experts. So at this time, we'll go ahead, just a reminder, please, 3 minutes. And forgive me. I would just ask too that state your name, if you will, and then we'll move forward. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Billy Mitchell with Pearl River Keeper.
Hang on just 1 second.
Can you speak into the mic?
I'm not sure that mic's on. All right, sir, one more time.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Billy Mitchell with I'm board member with Pearl River Keeper. Pearl River Keeper would like to ask the Corps to reject the expensive and environmentally destructive Lake Plan Alternative D1. D1's price tag, $900 million, comes with other detrimental costs to our communities and our environment. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service considers the Pearl River as one of the most biological diverse rivers in the country. The river supports 140 species of fish, 14 species of turtles, and 40 species of mussels. The Corps planning document states that Plan D1 will cause major long-term negative impacts to fisheries and aquatic resources and destroy over 700 acres of rare wetland habitat. D1 would destroy 50 acres of public lands and wetlands at LaFleur's Bluff State Park, an urban oasis home to over 200 bird species. Alternative D1 dam and impoundment do not provide any additional flood protection, but they do add $165 million to the final project cost. For a flood risk management project that is already over budget, how can we justify $165 million more to a dam that does not provide any flood mitigation? Should we pay extra $165 million for a lake impoundment that provides no remedy to address persistent and costly tributary flooding? Tributary flooding accounts for over 35% of the estimated annual flood damage in Jackson. Instead of subsidizing a lake development, the Corps could provide a more comprehensive solution to Jackson flooding problems. Pearl Riverkeeper would like to know if there is a potential for the Corps to scale back some of the river overbank excavation associated with alternative E1 to reduce the environmental damage and enhance recreational opportunities along the river. We can't afford to ignore Jackson tributary flooding damage our public lands and wild spaces and waste precious tax dollars on a development scheme. Instead, economic growth in Jackson can be achieved by reducing flood risk, which will improve property values and foster a more vibrant community. Pearl Riverkeeper urges the Corps to reject alternative D1 and instead prioritize levees, tributary drainage, improve conveyance at river bridges, and reduce alternative E1 excavation footprint. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next. Yes, sir.
My name is Luke Wegman. I'm a longtime resident of Jackson, Mississippi. My main interest and expertise is the historical and the natural and the citizens of Jackson. I'm actually very appalled of D1. With the lake, I'm looking at the history of the development of the project of the lake, and I question the motive. I know it was started by Mr. McGowan that proposed a lake project, and I understand there's going to be a lot of economic development on the Rankin County side. I also understand in our younger years we roamed the woods and the swamps in that area, and there are many Indian mounds still existing. In fact, Jackson started out as under the name of Shishkafoka. It's the name of an Indian town near the LaFleur's Bluff, and there's clusters. If you go to Appendix G and read the page on the Indian mounds, actually the plan is, the way I understand it, some are in danger of being bulldozed, and the plan is that some will be bulldozed. I have relatives with the Choctaw Nation and tribal, and they have expressed to me actually privately that not with this not with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, but some of the other groups that were involved in the lake plan, that they have been greatly disrespected. And I think it's a great disrespect to bulldoze down a mound and then offer the Choctaw tribe the bones. If somebody would dig up my grandmama's grave and then offer me to send me a FedEx box with the bones, that would be on a criminal level. But there are many mounds in there that the public is not aware of. Back in the 50s, and some of our relatives, they actually visited those mounds. And if you go back in the old brochures of the Chamber of Commerce of Jackson, Mississippi, they prided themselves. They told Jackson used to be a convention city in the 50s. It was the crossroads of the South, and they prided themselves in the heritage and in the culture and the history and the natural resource of the city. And they said, do not leave Jackson, Mississippi without looking at the Choctaw artifacts, meaning the mounds, and also some of the Civil War sites. So I would say that the trade-off with the lake is robbing us, the people, because the river itself belongs to the people. We, the people, are the state of Mississippi. And to turn the river, which characterizes our city, our town, it's a river town, and make it into a lake, which looks to me like, personally, it is more to favor economic development on the Rankin County side than even to help the flooding. Because most of the flooding I've seen all my life has always been the tributaries. I've never seen the river itself coming over the levees. It's always been the tributaries. So I would urge the board, please look at the loss of the historical, natural, and cultural resources. There's such a thing as historical and cultural tourism. That's a great thing to do. These things could be developed. Other states, Alabama and Arkansas, they turn historical sites into state parks. They have mound parks. They're protected. And this time and age where we can put satellites in space, I'm sure we can find a way to protect these and still have good flood control. So I just want to thank you for listening, and I urge you to consider these things. You can personally contact me. I left my email address on the paper. I'm Luke at MississippiTerritory.us. I'm a historian. I've collected information on the Pearl River for many years and on Mississippi. There's many things that is not known today to the people in Jackson about the Pearl River. David Crockett crossed the Pearl River at the Woodrow Wilson Bridge when it was a ferry. So there's many things we will lose historically and culturally and even socially if we would make that lake. So I have confidence in the Corps of Engineers that there is a better plan than just to cave into interest groups. We have enough coffee houses and Olive Gardens and Wendy's. We don't need a duplicate on the Rankin County side of Lakeland Drive. But it'd be great to preserve the natural resource. There's no state in the South that I know of that has its capital city or any major city that has in its heart a natural resource like the floodplain. There's wild turkeys in there. People don't even know what's in there. I spent much of my early young years in those woods. They don't even know what's being destroyed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Ashby Foote. I'm the councilman for Ward 1, which has a lot of frontage along the Pearl River there in the watershed. And I've just got a question I was going to, would like to get some feedback on or get some more information on in that regards. That two of the plans that were presented include McLeod and McLeod levee and the Canton Club levees. And those are two neighborhoods that are in Ward 1 that do have more than their share of high water events when the river rises. And the I'd like to get some additional information to share with the people who live in those neighborhoods so they can know what might happen, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I assume it'd be good to make their neighborhoods more safe if you can provide some information on what those levees would consist of, how close they'd be to the homes, and that sort of information.
Sir, great question. Ben, raise your hand. Ben Stubbs, standing up right there. He's a great engineer and can walk you through some of the briefing work back there for you, sir. We can follow up if you have more.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
My name is Morel Richardson, a longtime Jackson resident. I live just across Lakeland Drive here, next to the park. We see the river rise and fall all the time, and we pay attention to that like a farmer pays attention to the weather. What we've got here is basically Jurassic Park about to happen. We're being told that they have thought of everything, but every time that something is done to the river, there's unintended consequences. The Ross Barnett Reservoir, when it was built in the 60s, had to be drastically rechannelized downstream within a year because of the failure to anticipate all of the possible problems. Now, we're on high ground here. How many people know where the rainwater and floodwater goes from this campus?
Sir, could you get a little closer to the mic, please? Thank you.
It goes under Lakeland Drive, right along Lakewood Drive. It fills up level with the street, and then it floods our street. This has nothing to do with the river. This is flash flooding. Water that comes from here floods my street. This is all interconnected. You might as well consider this to be a tributary of the Pearl River, because when the lake levels are high, the water from here has nowhere to go. My street floods. My house is not going to flood. I'm 13 feet above 1979 flood. My house is not going to flood, but my street is going to flood, and there's only one way out. And we're going to have boats to remove residents if we don't do something about this. Also, the environmental effects. It's going to flood a lot of land which is now swampy and woody. It's going to devastate the ecosystems there. Your Mays Lake, the other lake, and the river are completely different ecosystems. When you flood everything, the lake on the other side of Mays Lake has a very narrow connection with the Pearl River, which is heavily eroding, and eventually it's going to go all the way through, and that lake is going to empty into the Pearl River. Unless they raise the level of the Pearl River, where all of our flooding gets worse. Mays Lake will connect with the river. That other lake will connect with the river. Instead of two independent lake ecosystems, you're going to have one big river ecosystem. It's just, there's too many things to go into. That just a walk along the riverbank and you will see the problems with this. You see the erosion. You'll see where this lake is about to spill into the river. If you walk down if you look at the storm drainage, they're not taking the tributaries into account. Now, I took some photos on the way over here of the water rising in that storm drain. Anybody that wants to see them, I will show you. And it's a disaster waiting to happen. That's all I have to say. As a resident who sees the floodwaters come to his doorstep, this project does not need to go ahead. It's Jurassic Park. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Dion Thompson, and I live in Canton Club. And I'm going to inject a couple of concerns about our community regarding the the comments here, we think that the comment period should be a little extended a little longer if all possible, if it's possible. Because it's too much for us to grasp all of a sudden with this draft that has been given to us with all these different amenities and these pages in here, and we really just need an opportunity and a chance just to kind of review it, and because we need to know what's going to help us better, because the other entities that are at stake here, they are not concerned about us, they're not concerned about the flooding, they're not concerned about the resources, they're not concerned about the habitats that live along this river. And my main concern, Colonel Gibson, is still this here. I asked you when you first came on board, please help us with this, because nobody here is doing anything. I'm just appalled, as the gentleman just said, because there hasn't been anything, to my recollection, that's going to help us. These alternatives that are being presented to us, they're just not going to get it. I don't see the comprehensiveness of anything from the spillway all the way down to where the river empties into the Gulf. I just don't see any comprehensiveness there. I mean, that's just my opinion. And another thing, these levees that we talk about, don't appease me with these levees, because at first it was just Canton Club. Now all of a sudden the other communities are included. But here's the thing about these levees: who's going to pay for them? How are they going to be maintained? And there are a whole lot of other questions about flood insurance and things of that nature that are revolving around these things. Now, our community here recently, in the past 4 or 5 months, it has threatened flooding. And I check the rivers all the time. I even go as far as going up to the Pearl River bend, because that's where most of the water comes in when it dumps into the North Pearl River and it comes into the reservoir. Now, I know you all said that the Ross Barnett Reservoir is not y'all's forte or what have you, and you can't do anything about it, but the levee board can. They can control and they can manipulate this reservoir, because this is when the water comes from that reservoir and it dumps on top of us right there in Canton Club, because we're at the back door. And when it starts flooding there, now once again, the country club that's up there has a nice levee there. Those immaculate homes, they never flood. But right down, about half a mile down from us, we get all of the flooding. The water backs up on us. Even the church that's next door to me, that has a somewhat semi-levee that they proposed. And how that levee got there, no one knows to this day, because when we checked the books, there was no information there regarding this levee. But here's the thing about it now. It starts at Canton Club and it goes all the way down, and the waters just inundate us and just flood us, on top of being flooded. And we must, at some point in time, come together to get this thing resolved. Now, I know our councilmen and all these other people, they could care less. And the new mayor that we have, that you all have now, he's probably going to roll right along with everybody else, and I'm just being transparent, because I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. And this one lake project that appears to be going forward and shoved down our throats, we don't need it. I mean, it's not going to help us any. It's not going to do anything about the flooding. And my main concern is, Colonel Gibson, please help us with this thing. Help us get this thing right, and don't just give us anything and just dump anything. When you return this to your superior, don't just take A1, A this, or what have you, and just dump it on us and just leave it on us. Please don't do that. I beg of you not to do that. And first and foremost, my heart and my mind is troubled right now, because of what's at the table and what we see, and it's nothing here. The levee board doesn't care. All they're looking for is to get a lake, and if this lake is proposed, it's going to be just like, in my opinion, I might be wrong, a giant cesspool. I mean, if you look at it, because look at all the raw sewage and things that's going into the river right about now. The river is just terribly polluted. I mean, the wildlife and fisheries and all of that's being polluted, and we're worried about getting a lake. We need to be concerned about this flood mitigation, getting this flooding problem situated, getting these tributaries taken care of that's not even involved in this. So I'm just, once again, I'm just throwing my hands up and I'm asking, help us here. If you're not going to do anything, then just let us know. Just be honest with us, and just let us know point blank what's going to happen. I mean, my main concern is our flooding in our neighborhoods. That's Canton Club, that's Parkway, and McLeod. We don't need to go through this again. We are sitting ducks right now all the rain that we've been getting between now and the first of next year. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't want to have to go and move my furniture and my stuff and move out of my house again and go through this again at the expense of us, going through this and just to get somebody, to have this lake. I mean, it's not working. Let's not just go there again. Let's get this problem fixed. Roger Whitaker stood out there and told me right to my face, shook my hand, Mr. Thompson, it's fixable, it's doable, and it's feasible, and we're going to do it. And I knew right then and there in the back of my mind, yeah, with your one lake project. The mayor that was there at that particular time, Lamumba, said the same thing. But they are only looking at what they can make and purpose in their pockets. That's all they're looking for, and we're not going to sit still, and we're not going to sit idly by.
Pardon me, sir. Could you make your final statement, please?
That's my final statement, and I hope somebody hear it. As you said, these are our voices, and we're going to voice our concerns.
Yes, sir. Thank you for doing so. Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. Yeah, my name is Reese Partridge. I'm a Jackson resident. Thank you for the opportunity for letting me speak to you again. I spoke in opposition to the most damaging elements of the plans presented last year and do so again this year. But today I'm going to mainly focus on the still apparent threats to LaFleur's Bluff State Park. With the main exception of one obvious 50-acre area where the park is negatively impacted, the low resolution of the maps provided to the public make it impossible for me to discern what else in the park is going to be likely to be excavated and destroyed. So I'd like to speak to some of that. Where I come from is as a member of the Jackson Audubon Society, which for 25 years has maintained a prothonotary warbler conservation project at LaFleur's Bluff State Park. Prothonotary warbler is a small yellow migratory bird that spends its winters in South America and flies to the U.S. every spring, building nests in suitable wooded wetland habitat. It then departs in late summer and fall for its return flight to South America. 500-mile non-stop trip across the Gulf is included in that. How they manage that is one of the mysteries and glories of God. Although not an endangered species, the prothonotary warbler is classified as a species of special concern because their numbers, like most other migratory birds that are neotropical, are in precipitous decline. We've lost 29% of all North American breeding birds since 1970 and 40% of all trans-Gulf migratory birds since 1970. So in some ways, prothonotaries stand as a proxy for the other migratory and resident birds who are habitat specialists who need wooded wetlands or they die and would eventually die out. They also stand as a proxy for other wooded wetland species and other taxonomy orders who die out without proper habitat requirements, the fish, the amphibians, reptiles, others. Jackson Audubon has maintained a circuit of prothonotary nesting boxes at LaFleur's Bluff with a high success rate, recently documented in the Mississippi Kite, the Journal of the Mississippi Ornithological Society, and highlighted for years in various magazines. In addition to the conservation project's features that I discussed last year, which I incorporate now, a new development this past year is that last September, an ornithologist and licensed bird bander banded several of LaFleur's Bluff prothonotaries at the Riverside Cypress Tupelo pond adjacent to the river boat launch. As usual, all prothonotaries departed LaFleur's Bluff for South America for fall migration. This May, a photograph was taken of one of those prothonotaries banded last fall in the area that has been banded, a demonstration of site fidelity. The cycle of spring and fall migration by LaFleur's Bluff transmigratory bird life is now documented for this declining species, but how much longer will it continue? I'd like to switch gears briefly here and talk a bit about economic development. When you enter LaFleur's Bluff State Park and drive the half circle around Mays Lake, go past the campground, the road dead ends at the riverboat launch. There, just downstream, i.e. south of the boat launch parking lot, is a magnificent, iconic, singular cypress tupelo gum pond. Exaggeration, well, evidently I'm not the only one who thinks it is that great. If you walk in the woods around Mississippi swamps long enough, you see strange things. Over 20 years ago, we walked up on that magnificent cypress pond to see a location shoot for a Hollywood movie. Actors, directors, cinematographers, the whole 9 yards. They used those big old 35mm Panavision type cameras. In the middle of the cypress pond was a pirogue and a man standing up on it pulling a lawn. The movie was My Dog Skip, based on the Willie Morris book.
Excuse me, sir, can I get you to?
I'm about to wrap it up.
Thank you.
You do have to look at it in the movie that comes at the very end. But that is not the only time that Hollywood has used that particular singular location for movies. Although nobody apparently keeps a list of the film productions that use that singular iconic pond, some of them include The Beast Within, a 1982 Gothic horror movie, much of which is online, made back in 1982. 1998's A Rising Place, a drama set in the Deep South, used that same pond, and including on their movie posters. Again, a pirogue, but this time being rowed. And then 2024, Adam the First, starring David Duchovny, has used that particular cypress pond. There are plenty of stills online of the pond in that movie.
Sir,
All right, just a half a minute here. Duchovny is standing in some of those. This brings in out-of-state money to Jackson and to Mississippi. We all know and can picture in our minds a forest primeval. We have a forest primeval right here, a river forest primeval. We all know it. The Corps' own analysts know it. Even Hollywood knows it. It can't be mitigated. Build only the necessary levees around the neighborhoods that are threatened by floodwaters. Don't screw up the river with billion-dollar boondoggle at taxpayer expense for a pie-in-the-sky real estate gamble. Thank you.
thank you, sir. Next. Ma'am?
Hello. Hello, my name is Carissa Bowley. I'm from Jackson. First, I want to say that this time and effort taken to hear from people of Jackson is incredibly important as we all shape our city together. Second, I would like to request an extension as well to the 45-day comment period. Not because people have time to sit through more flooding, but because there are hundreds of pages here and trying to understand all of it is a lot. And rushing to choose a plan that then turns out to be a bad plan and doesn't work well will not help anyone. Now I'm going to read the proclaimed objectives of the overall plan that is titled the Pearl River Basin Federal Flood Risk Management Project. I'll go through the 5 objectives one by one, and then I'll read directly from other parts of the revised draft environmental impact statement that are relevant to each objective. The first objective stated is to reduce risk of flooding for the city of Jackson, Mississippi and adjacent areas in Hinds and Rankin counties. Later in the document, this is about the weir, aka the dam of the Plan D1. It says, the proposed weir does not provide any flood control benefits, and construction of the weir necessitates additional pumping needs at existing levees as well as seepage protection in the form of berms and slurry walls on existing levee features upstream of the weir. The second objective is to reduce flood risk to human life and well-being. Also in the document, it says, this is about It's about the same weir/dam of Plan D1. Low-head dams often pose greater risk to life safety in combination with recreational activities. These structures trap victims in a submerged hydraulic jump with a resulting reverse roller. The third objective of this plan, to reduce flood risk to critical infrastructure. For example, medical centers, schools, transportation, etc. For this one, I don't have a quote from the document. Instead, I remember seeing on the news in 2020 during a flash flood that Isabel Elementary School and Jim Hill High School were completely surrounded by floodwaters, and this was in the middle of a school day. It concerns me that a plan we are calling a flood control plan for Jackson would absolutely not address the flooding of, in this case, Lynch Creek, or as a matter of fact, any creeks at all. I appreciate the levees added to this plan to protect the northeast neighborhoods closest to the river itself, but again, this is such a small portion of the overall Jackson flooding, and it doesn't make sense to embark on a $1 billion quote-unquote flood control plan that does nothing to address the other flooding in the city. The fourth objective stated in the document is to create a self-sustaining project that allows for minimal operation and maintenance cost. Also, in the document, it says about the alternative A1. It says alternative A1 is the only alternative with a positive benefit to cost ratio and can be used for comparing the level of flood risk reduction, environmental acceptability, and technical feasibility of the proposed alternatives. Of course, this is the non-structural plan, which means it's targeting very specific flooding with, more so with financial resources rather than building a structure and destroying a lot of land. But then the very next sentence says, however, alternative A is not an effective solution and has been screened from further consideration and is not recommended for implementation. That did not seem to make sense at all to me to in one sentence say, this is basically the best plan for this reason, and then in the next sentence say, but we're not considering it.
Madam, can I get you to wrap your statement up, please?
Okay. Just a few more points. Yet the Plan D1 that for some reason has not been screened from this is still up for consideration and has, as we've stated, an up to $1 billion cost and an average annual cost every single year after that, maintenance-wise, of $36 to $38 million. The last objective stated in the document is to minimize the potentially reasonably foreseeable impacts to downstream areas, the environment, and cultural resources. This is in regards to the D1 plan again, and of the fish passage that is included in the plan, it says, even if diverting the entire Pearl River through the fish passage, there will not be enough water available to support a fish passage throughout the calendar year. Meaning, it would be built and then it would be pretty much useless. The Plan D1 doesn't meet any of its own objectives. If I were to choose the best plan that does, I would recommend some version of A1 or a plan put forth earlier by a gentleman about cleaning underneath the old Brandon Bridge, or the plan submitted by Juan Fernandez also earlier today. What Jacksonians really need is super, super simple. I spoke to a woman who said in 2002 she paid $800 per year for flood insurance. Now she is preparing to pay $2,600 for the same insurance on the same edge of the same creek she's lived on for 23 years. People either need flood relief from tributaries or financial support.
Ma'am, thank you for your comments.
Okay, I am almost done. D1, okay, there's no line. D1 is such an extravagantly expensive plan, not because it would contribute to people like her, but because miles of living wetland and forest and river apparently must be destroyed for no flood relief. This brings me to the river herself. People have access to the river and two of her oxbow lakes in the immediate area. We can go to LaFleur's Bluff Park, with Mays Lake. We can go east and see fish and kayak. On Crystal Lake, we can visit the reservoir, or we can visit Bellhaven Beach. Now that is a local gem, and I'm willing to take anyone who would love to see Bellhaven Beach. I would love to take anyone there.
Ma'am,
So-
could you hold just 1 second?
Yes.
Is there anybody else that needs to make a comment and leave? I want to at least offer you that opportunity.
Okay.
See you none. Okay.
I'll end with this. The river belongs to us. We belong to her. I do want to see our city embrace her, but not destroy her. Lastly, I just want to end on something my mom says, because you can't go wrong with that. She said, "Why mess up a perfectly good river when there are swaths of our city that need investment?" Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Good evening, sir. My name is Richard Grant. While I am not in the Army Corps of Engineers, I am in the United States Army. I PCS to Jackson a little over a year ago, and being part of the Army is ingraining myself in that community, being a positive impact on that community. And over the year I've been here, this community is suffering. The state and local politics is just terrible. I'm gonna just leave it at that. And I would hate to see the United States Army and the federal government get involved in the messiness of this, and and tarnish the reputation of the Army. Now, I do wonder if there is no current acting secretary, assistant secretary of Armies for Civil Works. There is the deputy, who is acting secretary. My question is, are they going to wait for a secretary to get appointed, Adam Tell, to make a decision, or is it going to be up to the deputy and General Butch Graham? Have either of these individuals actually visited these communities that have been impacted too? That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Audrey Harrison, and I'm a citizen of Hinds County. I have some questions that I just really do need answers to, so I'll keep it brief. As it's been commented earlier, alternative A1 was listed as having a positive cost-benefit ratio. It also is the preferred plan by a lot of NGOs and obviously the community for various reasons, including protections of wetlands and forested uplands, fisheries, wildlife resources, T&E species, but also sediment dynamics, which one of my questions is, I see that sediment modeling is incomplete for Plan D1. Is that true? Is that correct?
Ma'am, that is correct. We have not completed a full sedimentary model for this analysis yet.
Okay, but it is expected to have a negative direct and cumulative impact. Is that correct? On sediment dynamics.
Again, we have not done the analysis, so I can't presume positive or negative.
Okay. On page 404, it says that the study is not completed, but it could be negative with the weir/impoundment, or partially negative without the weir, but in Plan E1. So one of my questions is, what due diligence was put into actually figuring out the buyout situation or the raised structure situations of Plan A1? If it is in a fiscally conservative state, if you have a plan that is exponentially cheaper to execute and it has less negative impacts to wildlife, to people, and provides a place for a free-flowing river, a section of river that is free-flowing and unimpounded to act as a river and spread out when it needs to, penetrate the groundwater and absorb the rainwater that does come off of this urban landscape. Why was the alternative A1 ruled out without any explanation within the revised draft environmental impact study? I think that we deserve to hear more about that. The number of property owners does not seem to be that many, and so it does seem that with the high cost of plans D1 and E1, that the extremely comparatively lower cost of A1 would necessitate more consideration, or at least to provide citizens with some explanation on how our tax dollars are being spent and why. If we, in 2025, if we can live with the river, strategically protecting vulnerable areas, which I was glad to see that the Canton Club levee was included in alternative A1 for $10 million. I don't know why $10 million hasn't already been spent to protect that neighborhood when there are other levees protecting other neighborhoods, as been mentioned before. So I would like more information as a citizen of Hinds County and as a taxpayer within the county as to why alternative A1 was removed from consideration, even though it is much less expensive, provides flood control, allows a river to be a river, and allows the potential for this very important green space in Jackson to be protected, including our only urban state park. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Trying to get this turned on. Ms. Harrison, that was a great comment, and I do agree, based off what you're saying, we could do a better job of probably explaining more of the so what and the why on A1. What I would like for you to do is, you have some great questions. David back there, hold your head up, David. He's our plan formulation lead on that. He can give you more specific details of what you're looking for on the A1 alternative.
Yeah, I saw in the RDEIS that there was, 80% buy-in in some areas of Louisiana, but a lower percentage buy-in in the Cumberland Basin, which does seem to be a little bit of a different river basin than the Jackson metropolitan area. So it would be great to have more data on that.
Yeah.
And the sediment modeling question is important too, because even if there is no, let me get this straight. So in last year's meetings, there were plans to excavate parts of the channel and to de-snag the channel. And you're saying that has been removed from this plan altogether. From any of the three alternatives, there will be no channel excavation. Is that correct?
Right. Basically, yeah. Thank you. And based on that, what we're doing, we're not going to do any work in the channel. It's all going to be the overbank area.
Okay.
I would encourage you to talk to Ben Stubbs on the sedimentation. Ben's right back there against the wall, one of our hydraulic engineers.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to kind of lay out for you and give you all an idea on the non-structural element, how we do that. Whenever we're developing a plan, we usually we estimate 100% participation, sorry, you need that word out, based on how we are able to estimate our costs. Realistically, and you mentioned Cumberland Basin, I believe they were around 50%, something on there.
50% is what?
Yes, we're on that rate. So, you would expect something along those lines. But to better answer your questions, I want to make sure that you get what you're looking for. But please see David, and be glad to talk with you about that.
I will, because on page 317, excavation of the main channel is included in the list of actions that could be taken. And so if it says that it could happen,
yeah,
and you're saying that it's not, I would just like some clarification on that, because that does have an effect on the benthic community of the river, including the mussels for which this river was named for, the Pearl River, and also some of the other endangered and threatened species. Okay, yes, thank you so much.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Can I ask another question if no one else is in line? It has to do with recreation. So I love recreating outdoors, and I love having access to public green spaces. So it's my understanding that in Plan E1, that the recreational benefits are positive, and that is because when the Corps of Engineers takes action on the land around the river, that land then becomes accessible to the public. Is that correct? Okay. So my question about D1 then is, I would assume that the land that the Corps touches becomes accessible to the public. But what happens if it's inundated? And what happens if that land surrounding the area that was touched by the Corps is privately owned and the only public land is then inundated and underwater? Is there still public access to the private land surrounding the land that was previously uninundated?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not a real estate attorney. I don't know the yes or no to give you on that. I will say that even if you look at the recreation plan, we're looking at having boat ramps, for kayaking, things of that nature. I would talk with Jack Malazzo. I know he is outside there. David, you can get him pointed to Jack. He's a recreational specialist. And again, he can help you. So you need to see David, Ben, and Jack, and I will make sure I'm out there to make sure all your questions are answered.
Thank you. I have a busy night ahead. I appreciate all of your time.
Any last questions or comments?
About the possible extension, who do we need to see about that?
The considerations
I
are...
have it under consideration. It is my decision, and it will be made before the end of the public comment period.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, guys. My name is Sean. Excuse me. I'm a resident of Belhaven here in Jackson. In 2022...
Excuse me, Sean. Could you
Yes.
give us your last name, please?
Sure. Sean McDonough.
Thank you.
In 2022, my wife and I were looking at purchasing our first home. One of the reasons we chose Belhaven was its close proximity to trails, LaFleur's Bluff State Park, and Belhaven Beach. I want to be clear about what I mean when I say Belhaven Beach. The Belhaven Beach I'm referring to, the large sandbar, is located at the end of Laurel Street, roughly half a mile south of the dam and water plant. Belhaven Beach and LaFleur's Bluff is an extremely special and meaningful place to me and my friends. Some of the first memories in Jackson were made here. It's somewhere where people will meet up on a warm day. It's one of the first places I took my dog when I adopted him, and it's a peaceful oasis I can rely on after a stressful day. I know I'm not the only one that feels this way. There is documented evidence that people in Belhaven have been using Belhaven Beach and LaFleur's Bluff for recreation for nearly over 100 years. Although it was formerly referred to as Devil's Elbow Beach. Having access to a free and public sandbar on the Pearl is a huge asset to our neighborhood and to our city. I urge you to please consider preserving this historic and recreational area. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Last opportunity.
One more comment. We're concerned about
Please, can you come to the mic, please? Remember, this is on public record. Thank you. And repeat your name if you would, please.
Morel Richardson.
Thank you.
Live on Lakeside. One thing that's not mentioned, among all the turtles and mussels and all, there are megafauna. There are beavers and otters and foxes that will be gone. Just going to say, there will be no more river otters there or beavers when this lake is built.
Thank you. Ma'am, if you want to make a statement?
Sure. My name is Thea Walker. I live in Can Club and was flooded in 2020 and almost again in 2022. I am interested in the buyout. I want out. It's taken a long time for all of these plans and alternatives, and it seems like there's not going to be a plan that will be suitable for the masses, and this will go on and forever, and I'm ready to get out. It's flooded over there now because of all the rain we've experienced this afternoon, and it's never going to end with all the different people wanting different things. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Hey there, my name is Travis Crabtree. As a landscape architecture and urban planning practice rooted in Jackson, we are in strong support of advancing the alternative D1 Pearl River flood control project. I find it interesting that people think that this is a real estate project. I see this as both a flood control project and quality of life opportunity. Jackson is one of the fastest shrinking cities in this country. The next generation is leaving the city for better quality of life and outdoor spaces in other parts of our country. We believe this project is critical to the future of the city and the region, not just for its ability to mitigate flooding, but its transformational potential to reconnect Jackson residents to the Pearl River through public space, green infrastructure, and ecological education that the highway divided us. For too long, flooding has jeopardized homes, businesses, infrastructure in Jackson, particularly in our most vulnerable neighborhoods. A modern flood control system like Alternative D is essential to protect the city's future, but beyond protection, the project presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine the Pearl River corridor as a civic and ecological asset, not just a barrier. Right now, the Pearl River, as it runs through Jackson, is unnatural. It's cut off from its historic floodplain, channelized and surrounded by levees that have made it largely inaccessible and ecologically degraded. This has disconnected residents from the river and diminished the landscape's potential to serve as a vibrant public space. We want to work with local leaders to envision a riverfront where flood control infrastructure is integrated with networks of trails, wetlands, public parks, and mixed-use economic development opportunities by introducing green infrastructure systems such as restored wetlands, bioswales, riparian buffers on the perimeter of this project. We can improve water quality, restore ecological habitat, and help the city adapt to extreme weather events. In addition to this revitalized river corridor, we can become an open-air classroom for Jackson's youth, offering environmental education opportunities focused on water, wildlife, and climate resilience. With thoughtful design and planning, this project has the potential to unite engineering with ecology, flooding, mitigation with placemaking. Mississippi is at a critical moment. The state continues to fall behind on key economic and quality of life indicators, and people are leaving at a rapid rate in search of better opportunities. Jackson particularly struggles with aging infrastructure, lack of access to nature, and a limited sense of public life. The next generation wants more. They want access to rivers, parks, and safe, vibrant public spaces. The absence of these amenities is one of the main reasons people are moving away. A bold, forward-looking project like this can help to reverse those trends by stabilizing neighborhoods, inspiring investment, and signaling that Jackson is serious about quality of life. We urge state, federal, and local agencies to move this project forward with urgency, transparency, and vision. The Pearl River has shaped Jackson's past. It's time that we invest in shaping its future. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. My name is Greta McHarris. Over the past several weeks, with the help of some of our community-centered neighbors and various people-centered organizations, I've come to better understand the RDEIS and what it proposes, and that it proposes to ease the very real trauma felt by my neighbors in Canton Club Parkway and McLeod, who are directly impacted. Initially, I wasn't going to say anything until I heard the lady talk about the fact that the storm drains were flooded from the rain today. My house is one of those that flood. I thank you, Colonel Gibson, and the other members of the Corps for hearing us over the past several years. We're grateful that you heard us, and the proposed new levies and alternatives D1 and E1. And many members of our community request today is that further plans be considered that consider our existing storm drains. I live in Ward 1. There is no help for us with the storm drains. I live in McLeod, and I know personally that our storm drains are failing us, and I'm nervous to go home after I leave here. Our clogged and collapsed culverts cause flooding and damage our foundations, walls, and plumbing. Many of us who are impacted are not in areas zoned for flooding, and as a result, cannot use our homeowners' insurance to repair the damages. When we've made repairs, we've done it out of our own pockets, or the repairs have just gone undone. Please hear us. This is a central issue that has not been addressed. As you, the levee board, the Corps of Engineers, continue to create plans for our future, the levees, please take into account the current state of our drainage infrastructure or lack thereof in Jackson, please. And thank you for listening and for hearing our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? All right. Okay, sir.
Deon Thompson, once again. As we have just witnessed, there are people in Canton Club, they are concerned about buyouts, they're concerned about other things that have been said, and Colonel Gibson, it's just about around this RDEIS, it's just been so much controversy about what's going to happen, who's going to do what, and how it's going to be done, and you see it now. As Ms. Greta just said, the flooding in our neighborhood right about now. The young lady just said she wants a buyout, and she's along with about, I know at least about 50 other people in McLeod, in my neighborhood, and Parkway. They have that same option, well, and because they ask these questions during our meetings. How much are we going to get? When is this going to happen? When is that going to happen? This is why we tell them to come to meetings like this, so they can voice their opinions, so they can see what's going on. And we try to give them the most feasible, pertinent information that we can, so they can know what's going on. And with the draft that we have here now, if we can, like I say, have some more time to look at this and really dissect it and look at it, because the young lady right here, she did an excellent job on that. I like the way she thinks. And this is something that we need. We don't just need something shoved down our throats. We don't need our supervisor, and I'll call his name and really don't care, shoving stuff like this down our throat just to get what they want. Because their homes are not flooded. They don't have to get up, and move this and move that and help your neighbors do this and go through all of this here. And another thing about it, we're all in this together, true enough, but let's work together. We talk about one voice and one Jackson and this, that, and the other. Look at Jackson, how it's just failing. I mean, the storm drainages and things along those lines, this is something that needs to be fixed now. This is something that can be fixed. So let's fix it the way that it really needs to be fixed. And we applaud you. We really do, the Corps, because you have given us, the know-how, the tenacity, the hope that we do have, and you all do not work for the levee board as they seem to think that you all do. But you're working here for us, and hopefully you're going to give us some kind of plan. And I noticed throughout this whole thing, y'all never told us anything about what you all were going to do. Y'all never gave us a solution. Y'all gave these different alternatives, and they're here. So, and it's less like more so now we have to pick from the one that's going to be best for us. But at the same time, let's get this thing right, Colonel Gibson. Please, let's get it right. And I just applaud you once again. And with our neighborhoods, the 3 neighborhoods that are there: Canton Club, McLeod, and Parkway. We're counting on this here to get done the right, appropriate way, because if we do it now, we won't have to somewhere 3 or 4 years later down the line be flooded again, and then we're back at the same base. And this has been going on for a long time. As the lady said, she's frustrated. A lot of us are frustrated about it. Let's get to a feasible solution that's comprehensive, as we stated from the start when Colonel Klein was here. And if we can do that, that'll be fine.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, with that, I would like to conclude this meeting. Thank you so much for your attendance. Request you please be careful going home. Take a few minutes and look out in the foyer if you haven't. Thank you. Bye-bye.